Hey everybody, today we're going to be making this adorable little Liberty angel. She's really similar in a lot of ways to how we've done the other angels that you'll find on the YouTube channel and that I've posted in our private Facebook group. However, her dress is done just a little bit differently. You can see we kind of did like a little stars and stripes sort of design, curved it down a little so the blue's here on one side and then the red and white stripes are going up to the top, and it's really cute. So that's kind of the main difference in this one compared to those other videos that I've done. So I hope that you have fun making this. Let's go ahead and get started talking about what you're going to need in order to finish her. The first thing that you will need is the angel shaped foam cone. We've got these in the Ornament Girl shop. I'll put a link right below the video for you. Or if you wanted to, you could do something a little bit more similar to what we did in November 2018 for our club kit angel, where we used a regular cone. It did not have the head on the top, and then we put a bead on the top to replace the head. So you could do that as well for any of these angels if you don't have this angel shaped foam cone. Again, you can find these in our Ornament Girl shop. You will need 1 3-inch square for the bottom. This is the base of her dress. This is just going to cover the bottom of that foam, 3-inch square. And then you're going to need 2-inch squares in each of those 3 colors that we've used on the dress. So for the blue, I used 16 2-inch squares in my variation. However, in the kits that we've got, I put 18 squares just in case you need any extra. For the red, I used 13, but we put 16 in the kit just in case you need extra. And then for the white, I used 14 in my version, and we put 16 in the kit. Now, all of these fabrics are Snowberry by Moda. This line of fabrics is actually out of print, although if you do some Googling, you might be able to find it. However, you could use any red, white, and blue fabrics to make your own version of this Patriotic angel. Okay, so don't feel like you have to have these. I do recommend that you get something, a fabric that's tonal like these are. So mostly the colors that you, like the red, white, and blue, mostly red, white, and blue with maybe a little variation like these have. So something really tonal. I would not recommend anything too busy or striped fabric because we're gonna be creating stripes with the red and white colors, and so if you add in like a striped, like red and white striped fabric, you're gonna lose kind of the overall design. Still, don't be afraid to experiment. Nothing is ever set in stone when it comes to making these ornaments. You'll need about 85 straight pins, and those pins are for putting on all of the fabric pieces, and they are all hidden within the folds of the dress. But you're also going to need a small handful of gold pins, and that is for the decorations on her dress because the heads of those pins will show. So for example, on the beads going up her dress, pinning on this star, anything that shows, you're going to want to use a gold pin. In our kits, we've included 17 of them. You're actually only going to need, I think, like 15 or so, but you'll just need a tiny little bit of those. You're going to need about 2 yards of this string for wrapping the head of the angel. I will put a link to a place that is similar to the ones that we put in the kit. You're gonna get this in the kit, it's kind of iridescent, a little bit sparkly. I do have a recommendation for a string that is very similar, and I'll put that link right below. You are also going to need a couple of ribbons. These are for the wings and the hanger. So for the hanger, and I actually forgot to put a hanger on my example, but for the hanger, you're gonna want a piece of ribbon that's about 8 inches or so, and I'm just using a navy satin edge ribbon. And then I've also got the same ribbon in a 24-inch length. These are for one set of the wings on the back. And then I've got this kind of darker red with a little bit of a shimmer in there, and I'm using that for the other set of wings. This is also 24 inches. So for each of the wings, you're gonna want a piece that's 24 inches long, and then for the hanger, you want something that's about 8 inches or so. Just depending on how long you want the hanger, you can kind of adjust that however you want. And again, you don't have to use these exact ribbons. You could use whatever matches what you like, whatever fabrics that you're using in your angel. This is though what comes in our kits. Okay, and we've got a couple of different embellishments here. We've got a little flag. I actually just got these at Hobby Lobby. They're just little like toothpick flags that you use like at a cookout. So that's what I used sticking into her wings, just for a little extra, just a little bit of extra patrioticness. Patrioticness? I don't think that's a word, but that's what we've got there. So Hobby Lobby is where I found those, but you could find them anywhere. They're really easy to find. I've got this antique bronze little kind of medallion thing That's what we're using for her halo. And then I've got 2 of these antique bronze flat back stars. And those are what I'm putting on the front, right under her, like right under her head, kind of where it goes into her dress, and then also on the back of her wings. And then I've got 10 or 11 ivory pearl beads. Now, usually with our different angels, I just kind of put those haphazardly around the dress. On this variation, I put them going down the swirl here just because I wanted to accent that. You can do whichever you want. So I've got 10 or 11 or so of these little ivory pearl beads. And these, by the way, are 3 millimeters. So I think that's it for actual materials. As far as like tools, you're gonna need a pair of scissors. And I actually like to have a pair of small scissors on hand for the angels just because you're gonna be cutting in a couple of spots that are a little bit smaller and harder to get to with like larger fabric shears. And then you're also going to need a good craft glue. And my favorite craft glue for these is Beacon's 3-in-1 Advanced Craft Glue. You need something tacky. So hot glue would work, but I do worry a little bit about hot gluing the cord onto their heads just because you're putting a lot of glue on there and the glue is hot and I don't want to like melt the foam. And it's going directly on the foam. So I do like to use something like this instead for this particular project. This is very tacky, it's very sticky. The only problem with this glue is it will stick to everything else also. So you want to make sure that you've got like a napkin on hand that you can wipe your fingers off on because you're gonna get a little messy. Don't wipe your pants, which I've done, because it'll never come out of your clothes. Alrighty, so this is my favorite. There's a couple others that are similar to this, but you want clear because you want it to dry clear, and you want tacky. Alrighty guys, so I think that is everything. I think I've covered all of it. So let's go ahead and get started with making her. So we're gonna get started by covering the base of the cone, and we're gonna use that 3-inch square for this. And I just like to lay it down flat with the pattern side facing down, and then just center the angel sitting right on top. I've got a little bit of a fold here in the side, but this is centered just about. It doesn't have to be perfect, by the way. Do not worry about being perfect. You just wanna make sure that you can pull up your corners and that they'll cover the whole bottom of the cone. And I'm gonna start with 2 of those corners, pulling them up opposite each other, and then holding that in place, I'm just gonna take a pin and pin along the bottom edge. So here's my bottom edge. I'm pinning right along the bottom, just a little bit up from the bottom into the side of the cone. I'm probably like 1/8 of an inch or maybe a little bit more than that up from the top. Now when you do this, be really sure that you pin slightly on an angle up into the foam because you don't want to pin on an angle going out of the foam and poke yourself through the bottom. So just keep that in mind as you're doing this entire base, that you want your pins to go up into her body a little bit so that you don't accidentally get yourself. So I've pinned one side, now I'm going to go opposite and do the same just to get that held on there so it's not going to go anywhere now. And now I'm going to do the same thing with the 2 opposite corners that I didn't pin yet. I'm just going to pin those down and just make sure that everything's covering. And it's okay if it's messy. Some parts are going to be overlapping more than other parts. That's okay because we're going to trim it up after we're done. We just want to make sure that the whole base is covered. So I've got more over here on this side than I do on the other side, but I'm not worried about it because I've got the whole base covered, so I think I'm good. So we've got 4 pins in there, and now what we're gonna do is just go in between of each set of pins that we've already placed. We're just gonna go right in the middle in between, doing the same thing, flattening that fabric down, pulling it up on the side, and then just taking a pin and pinning down in. And I'm gonna go between each of those initial sets of pins, going all the way around. So at this point, I've got a total of 8 pins in there. I'm gonna go around one more time and put 1 more pin in between of each of those pins. Now, I'm not really worried about how many pins I use. You can use more pins if you need to. This is just a way that I keep track of kind of like where I am. And again, remember to keep those pins pointing up into her body so that you don't poke yourself through the base. I think I've arrived back to my starting point. I'm gonna put one more right here. Oh, not right there, right here. And if you see any spots that look like they need a little extra help, go ahead and stick a pin in there. Otherwise, we're ready to trim this up. And I'm just gonna take my scissors and just go around the edge right above that pin line and trim off any excess. And it's okay if it's not pretty because the bottom layer of the dress is going to hide any raw edges and the pins. All right, so we're ready to get started with the dress. We're gonna start with the blue 2-inch squares, and we're just gonna put a couple pieces along the bottom. So we're starting with one of those squares with the pattern side facing away from you. And we're gonna take this and fold it in half one time. So now the pattern's gonna be on the outside and you've got a folded edge along one side. And then we're gonna fold it in half one more time. So now you've got a folded edge along two sides and then raw edges on the other two sides. So holding this like a diamond, you want this to open to the left, raw edges facing up, and the finished edges facing down. Okay, and the opening again to the left. And we're gonna take this and put it on the bottom of the angel right along the base so that it's the two corners, including the open corner, are sitting right along the pin line. So that means a little bit of the bottom of the tip here is gonna hang out from below the base. And here's our open side. Remember, it's open to the left. I'm gonna take a pin and just pin straight through that corner to hold that side closed. Again, keep that pin angled up into the foam. And here's what we've got. So this side's hanging free for a second. And we've got the folded edges forming a tip that's facing down, and it's kind of extending below the base of the angel. Now we're gonna grab another 2-inch square and we're gonna repeat that. Folding it in half once, pattern side was facing out, so now it's on the outside. And folding it in half again. And then turning it so that the raw edges are faced up. It's opening to the left. And what we're gonna do is take the left side of this new square, the open side, and just cover the right side of our first square. Just overlapping the corners about that far. That's about 1/4 of an inch or maybe a little less than that. You don't have to be exact, you just want to overlap that corner. And when you pin this into place, it's gonna hold down both the right side of the first square and the new square. Like this. So pretty easy, right? You could actually, as you're putting these on, you could pin both sides down at a time, like as you go. You're gonna use a little bit more pins that way, of course. So doing it this way will save you some pins. But the other thing too is putting them on in this way, you're kind of ensuring that you've always got the open side to the same side going around every single layer, and it really just makes it look a lot more consistent in the end. It's a lot more finished looking. All the folds are on one side, all the closed side edges are on the other side, and it just looks really consistent and nice. So that's just a little tip. I don't like how I have that pin going in. It's going on too much of an angle. Alrighty, I'm repeating this with a third square. Same thing, opening to the left, raw edges facing up. And again, just like before, I'm going to cover the right edge of my previous square with the left edge of my new square and pin that in place. And remember, you want these corners of the square to stay low. So you want them to stay along the bottom edge just above the base. That way you've got this little bit of the tips kind of going below the base a little bit, which is going to look really pretty when it's sitting. It's going to look like a dress. All right, so we're going to repeat this 3 more times. We're not going to cover the whole bottom with blue because we want to create that stars and stripes effect, but we're going to put 6 pieces of the blue along the bottom. So I'm creating my square, raw edges facing up, opening to the left. There's 4. All right, so we've got 5 on there. We're gonna do 1 more of the blue. And we've got just a little space left, and we're gonna fill that in with 2 red squares. So we're gonna do the exact same fold as what we've done for the blue pieces, but we're switching to the red fabric. So I've got my red piece of fabric, pattern side facing down, and I'm gonna create that same exact mini square by folding it in half twice. Raw edges faced up, open side to the left. And just like before, I'm going to cover the right side of my last square and pin down right over top of that, holding both of those squares in place. And now I've got just enough room to put 1 more red square. Now this time we have to pin down both sides because this is the last piece of this layer. So now I'm pinning on the right side as well. And that is layer 1. So there is her bottom layer of her dress. All right, so we are going to begin layer 2 of the dress. We're going to start with that same exact fold, and we're going back to the blue fabric. Same exact fold, which we're going to be doing the same exact fold all the way until we get to the top layer. So I don't want to just keep sounding like a broken record, but same fold, folding it in half twice. Raw edges facing upwards and opening to the left. That's what we're going to be doing until I tell you otherwise. So looking at your first layer, you've got those blue pieces until you reached red and you came around and you put those red pieces on, the 2 red pieces on at the end. So what we want to do now is we want to look at our first couple of blue pieces, and those will be the blue pieces to the right of your red. This is where we started, and you can tell because we know we ended with red, and that last red piece has 2 pins in it showing. So this is our first blue. We want to start between our first blue and our second blue piece so that we can start moving on an angle up. Remember how in the original version of this, the blue's kind of going on an angle? So I'm gonna do just like before. Now, something I forgot to say, I'm kind of coming up a little. So before we started at the base, I'm coming up just a tad, probably 1/4 of an inch or so, just enough that I'm going to cover the raw edges and raw and pins from layer 1. And I've got this point going right between the 2 points from the layer below. And I'm going to pin the left side to hold it down. Now we're going to continue to the right just like before. Now for this piece, we tried to be really strategic in the placement, starting between 2 pieces from the layer below. However, we're not going to be able to do that for every blue piece going around and continuing up the cone. And that's because it's impossible to do that, because we're not going to have the same amount of pieces per layer as we started with on the bottom. Because of course we're going up a cone, which is getting more narrow as it goes up. So we're not going to be able to fit as many pieces around each layer as we started with down here. But just for this first piece here, we want to make sure we started here, and that's so that we can create that angle as we're going up. So let's go ahead and move on to the next piece. Another blue piece. We're actually going to put 5 blue pieces on with this layer. We did 6 in the first layer. We're going to go to 5 in this one. And I'm just placing this in about the same position, so I'm covering the same amount of the previous square, but I'm also trying to pay attention to what is below, because I want to make sure I cover as much of the pins and raw edges from below as I can. And sometimes it's hard to get perfect, but just do your best with covering stuff up. And this is our third blue piece. So I'm going to do 2 more if I can fit them. And this is why in our kits we include extra pieces, because you just kind of really never know exactly how many pieces you're going to need. Everybody's a little different. Everybody's placement might be a little bit different. So it's hard to know exactly what you're going to need. But what we're going for here is by the time we come around to our last piece, we want it to sit somewhat between the last 2 blue pieces from the first layer, just like we started with. And this is working out pretty nicely. So here is these two blue pieces before it turns to red. And I want this piece to sit somewhat centered, somewhat in that general area above those two pieces. So I've just finished my 5 blue pieces. I'm leaving the right corner unpinned. I'm getting ready to switch now to my next color, which is going to be white. And you'll see here we've got enough space here to put about 3 white squares to fill in this space between the blue. And that's what we want. We want the red and white pieces to expand. We're going to be adding more and more red and white pieces as we move up the cone, as we're reducing the amount of blue pieces. And that's going to give us that cute look of the blue kind of peeking out of the corner and then the red and white growing as we're moving up the cone. Now something else here too, if you set down your angel a lot while you're getting your next colors and all that, which I tend to do, it can be a little bit hard to see where you are when you pick it back up, especially as you move a few more layers up. It can start to be a little bit hard to see where you are. Leaving that right corner unpinned is going to help you because you'll be able to see exactly which piece you left off on. We know that we want to start our next color right here, and you're going to see what I mean as we move up because it does get a little harder to see where you're at. Okay, so I'm getting ready now to move to white. So I'm switching to my white fabric and I'm creating that exact same square fold. And now I'm going to place this just to the right of my last blue piece. And I'm going to try to be really strategic that the point of this white piece is to the left of the red below and to the right of the blue below. And this is what's going to give us that red and white staggered stripe going up the dress. Pinning the left side, and I'm going to go ahead and grab my next square. And now with this middle one here, it doesn't really matter exactly where it's sitting, but with this one, we want to do the same thing we did over here with the first one, but opposite. We want the red to be on the left and the blue to be on the right, as much as possible. It's going to be hard to always be perfect with this, but that's just kind of the general idea that we're aiming for here in order to create that staggered look. And of course on this one, we're pinning both the left and the right sides. So there is layer 2. All right, so we're moving on to layer 3 now. At this point, we're gonna change things up just a tiny bit with the order of what we're putting things on. And this is just something that I found to make it a little bit easier to build those stripes out. Normally we were starting with the blue pieces, and for this layer we are going to put on 3 or 4 blue pieces depending on what we have room for here in this space. But just to help us get a better starting point for the blue, I actually want to begin with one of my next color, either red or white pieces first, and I'm going to do this in the next couple of layers. We are on the layer where we're beginning, where we are doing another red stripe. We're going red, white. So I'm gonna grab a red square and just get things ready here. Same fold as usual. And I'm gonna start to the right of where I ended my last layer. So I ended my second layer with this white piece. I wanna start just above that. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to get the placement of this piece correct, because we're trying to build those stripes, like I said. And if this isn't right, we're not gonna get that look like we're going for here. So I'm gonna start here. And I'm gonna pin this in place like always. Here's the thing. We're gonna go ahead and move to the blue now. I basically just wanted to have a starting point for that. We're gonna move to the blue. And that's gonna go on next. But instead of putting the left corner down on top, I actually am just going to put it down under the red piece that I had just laid on there. Okay, so normally what we've been doing is just moving around the cone, laying our next piece on top of the previous piece so that its left corner covers the right corner of the previous piece. but I don't want to do that. I want to kind of, it's almost as though we are starting with the blue piece and ending with red, just like always, except for that I put the red one on first so I knew where to put it. So we want everything else to look just like the other layers. So instead of covering up the right side of that red corner or red square, I'm just going to put it underneath. And I'm going to go ahead and pin that in place. And so see, now the red piece looks just exactly like the last white piece did on the last layer, and then the last red piece did on the first layer, where they were the last pieces put on. Actually, did I pin this one down? It almost looks like I never pinned down the right side of this. I'll figure out what I did there when I go back and watch the video. But anyway, we're just gonna go ahead and keep going now, just like we always did. So I'm gonna leave this right corner unpinned, grab my next blue piece, and then now we're just gonna go like always. I'm gonna put the left side of this on top of the right side of the previous blue piece, pinning it down. And now I'm gonna grab one more blue piece. I think that's what I'm gonna be able to fit here. And putting it in the next position. Remember too that we're always trying to make sure that we're covering the raw edges and pins from the layer below. That's going to affect your side to side placement, like how close together you put these squares. This one I'm putting a little closer, I feel like, than some of my other ones, just because I've got some raw edges under there and a pin that I want to make sure are covered. So we've done 3. Okay, so now we're back around already to our colorful area. And we're at the point now where, in order to make those red and white stripes stagger up on this side, the same way that we're trying to do over here, it's time to go ahead and put a red piece on. So on this layer, I used 3. You may have had to use 4. It's going to be somewhere right around that neighborhood though. It's going to be probably 3 or 4. So now I have gotten my red square. I'm all ready to go. And I'm going to go ahead and place this just like always. Left side of this new red square is going to cover the right side of the previous blue square. And now you can see it's creating that little staggered look going up the dress. And we're just going to now continue to fill in all the way up until we get back to the first red piece that we put on this layer. So in this case right here, I've got a choice. One piece, one square is fitting. It's reaching from the right side of this piece here all the way to the left side of this piece, but it's kind of barely reaching, and I've got a little bit of messiness under there that won't really be hidden very well. So I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make the choice to try to squeeze 2 of these squares into this same area, which means that I've got to put them a little bit closer together. So I'm just going to move this one over to the left a little bit. So see how much of the last square that I'm kind of covering up now because I've moved it over a little bit? And that's okay. And now I can fit one more in right there. And there we go. So there is that layer. So what we could have done too, just to make this super like consistent with the rest of the angel, but it really doesn't matter. You could actually unpin the left side of this first piece now and do this. Cover up the last piece with the edge. And that's like, now we basically have just created the effect as if we had never started with that red piece. If we had started with blue and went all the way around and then ended with this piece. And that's really kind of what we're going for there. But now we've got those pretty staggered pieces going up. So now we're gonna do the exact same thing for layer 4, but we're switching to the white. And we're gonna start it the same way. We're gonna start with the white piece over here. That way we can see exactly where to get the placement right. And then we'll move to the blue. And actually on this layer, we're only going to have like 1 or 2 blue pieces. And then I think that this is the last layer where we're going to even have any blue pieces. And then from then on, it's going to be red and white, all red and white. So for this piece, I want the white to sit just to the right of that red, last red piece from our third layer. Actually, technically it was the very first piece of the third layer. And I want it to look like it's kind of going up on a diagonal, kind of staggered like that. So that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and pin that down. But I'm only pinning the left side right now because I want to go ahead and stick a blue in there. And remember, we're going to put the blue under the right side of this white piece. So where I would want the blue piece to sit is right about, I'm actually wanting it a little bit close to the white piece because there's an edge right there that I want to make sure is covered up. But remember, we want to tuck that under the white piece. So that's kind of an awkward one because look where my pin is. It's all the way over, like past the center really of this blue square. But again, that's okay. And also keep in mind, we're moving up the cone. We're moving into a smaller area of foam to cover. So your pieces may have to get a little bit closer together in order to fit in the area that we're trying to pin it. So, okay, so we just put that piece on. Now really fast, just because I want to make sure that it's really clear why we're doing this. If I were to not tuck the left side of that blue piece underneath of the white, instead we would have this. It would be covered like this, and it would be covering up the edge of the white. And then when we went to our next layer, oops, let's just say we went to our next layer and we started with red, what would happen is there would be a little bit of blue showing in between of the white and the red. And that would have happened down here. There would have been a little bit of blue showing there. So rather than this kind of staggered diagonal look going up, we would have had more of like an interlocking kind of look, which, you know, has its applications, I'm sure. But right here, we wanted this particular look. So that's the reason why we're doing that whole tuck thing to begin with, so that we can get that diagonal. All right, so this is the blue piece we just put on. I think I'm going to need, I think one more. So I'm just gonna look at this. This is where you're gonna have to kind of make some artistic decisions. So I'm actually looking at the other side of this now to kind of see where I know I'm gonna want my white piece on the other side, the other diagonal. And I want to see, based on where that's gonna go, if I have room to put another blue piece in here. And for me, I do. I have enough room to squeeze one more blue piece in here because look, I've got a pin down there that I want to cover up and the raw edge right there. So before I put this one on, I'm gonna squeeze one more blue piece in there. And I am gonna have to squeeze it. Probably like right there. And for this one, I'm actually, look, I see how I'm covering up that white edge a little bit. Just like before, I don't want to cover up the white edge. So I'm going to tuck that under there too. This may or may not even happen to you. You might not have to squeeze another blue piece in there like I am. I'm kind of glad it's happening though. That way you know what to do here if this happens to you. Okay, so I squeezed that blue piece in there, and now I'm switching to the white again. And the rest of the layer is going to be white. But for this one, I'm making sure that I place this so that those diagonals are going up that way. And can you see what's going to happen here? Our diagonal's coming up on this side in this direction, and it's coming up on this side in this direction, and eventually on the next layer, they're going to meet. And the whole layer is just going to be red. Our next layer is red, and the entire layer is just going to be a red layer, just kind of connecting everything together. So now we'll continue on, and we'll go all the way back around to where we started with white pieces. Alrighty, I've just finished that layer. That last one, I feel like I could have squeezed 2 in there, or I could have done what I did. I just decided to go ahead and go with this for now, and who knows, I might change my mind after I do a couple of pieces, but I think I'm happy with this for now. So there was the rest of that white layer, and then there are those couple of blue pieces that I squeezed in there. It's kind of awkward looking, and it almost looks like you need to put a new piece right down on top of there, but that's where those blue pieces are supposed to go. Now we're going to do one more layer. Actually, we've got 2 more to go, but we're going to do one more layer with red. And it's going to go all the way around. So this is going to be the layer that connects the colors above her dress and basically brings it all together. And as a matter of fact, let's just start right there. I'm going to start right there in between of those white pieces. But remember, we're not going in between of them like this because we're not on that layer. We want to come up a little bit. Those blue pieces down there are part of that layer. But this is just where we want it all to connect. And actually, I think I'm going to come over here just a little ways. That way, when I come back around, there'll be another point right there, and it'll all kind of look like it goes together. So there's the first piece, and I'm just going to continue on all the way around until I get back to where I started. Alrighty, so that's the end of that layer. So we've got one more layer to go. It's going to be entirely white fabric, and this is the layer where we will be changing the way we do the fold. There's actually only a couple pieces that go across the top, and we're just going to be changing the fold a little bit so that it goes up there around the neckline a little bit neater. In the meantime, you may see that you've got a little bit of fabric kind of crawling up her neck a little bit, and we don't want that. It's going to be in the way. So this is where some small scissors are going to be handy. We're just going to go along the top, and this is only if necessary. You might actually not even have any fabric up there at all. But if you do, you can just go around the top and just snip off some of those little pieces. And just get them out of the way. Be real careful not to put pressure on her neck. We don't want to behead her by accident. Just like that. So we're just neatening that up a little bit so that it's easier to put our final layer on. Alrighty, so we're moving to the white. Like I said, instead of folding this in half and then in half again to create a smaller square, we're actually going to fold it in half diagonally like this. So the top point down to the bottom point like this, and we've now got a triangle upside down. Then we're going to fold it in half again like that. So we've now just created a small triangle. We're going to put it onto her the same way with the left side, the opening at the left side and the raw edges towards the top. We've just got a little bit of a different shape going on now. And the reason we're doing this is because now we can have this sit around the top of her neck in a much more neat and clean way. So we don't have all those extra edges that we have to worry about chopping off at the end. So we're just going to start over, and because because our last layer was all red, we don't have to worry about where we're starting. The only real thing that we have to worry about is just covering those raw edges and pins from the layer below. So the first one, you're going to feel like you need to cover all the things. You don't. We're going to be putting several of these up here, so don't worry. Just try to aim your point so that it comes down over top of some stuff that you want to hide. And when you have it where you want it, you can pin down the left side. By the way, I feel like I haven't said in these last couple of layers, probably because I've gotten so used to making these and I just take it for granted. But remember how on the bottom we were angling our pins upward into her body so that we didn't poke ourselves in the bottom? Well, as we worked our way up from the bottom up to the top where it's getting skinnier, we have to do the opposite. We have to pin down into the foam so that it doesn't come out the other side and poke us. And I think I totally have forgotten to mention that until now. And so I am really sorry, especially if you have poked yourself. I apologize for that. But it's especially important up here because we're right up here at the neck. It's very narrow up here. So we have to make sure that the pin is going down into her body and not out the other side where it's going to get you. And that hurts. So I'm going to make sure that as I pin this left side of this triangle that I'm pinning downward into her body. And now I'm going to go ahead and wrap this around. It's not going to be perfect. And you probably aren't going to be able to get the right corner all the way up to her neck, but don't worry about that so much. Just wrap it around as best you can, get it as flat as you can, and pin the right side. Like that. Now we're going to repeat this. So again, I'm folding this in half, top point to bottom point, and the pattern was on the outside. And then again in half, so I've got this small triangle opening to the left. And now I'm just going to go next to the one I already placed, moving to the right, kind of like that, covering the next section of raw edges and things that I want to cover, and then wrapping it around her neck and pinning just like before. Like that. And I'm just going to carefully try to flatten this fabric that's around her neck. Be really careful there. We don't want to break her neck off or her head off. And we're going to repeat that with another triangle. So I'm just going to do this a few more times until I get around to where I started, just covering up as many of those pins and raw edges as I possibly can. So it's looking like I'm going to be able to get away with just one more triangle to cover up this last little section. Now, keep in mind that you're never going to be able to cover every single pin at the top because you're always going to have at least the last two pins showing of the last piece that you put on there. That's completely to be expected. There's just no way to make it perfect up here. We've got some upcoming angels that have some different like trims and things on the top because you could like wrap a piece of trim around there and just totally cover up everything at the top. But for these ones that are entirely fabric like this, there's no way to cover them all up. But what we do is we do try to situate everything so that you can cover most of the pins. Like if there's one particularly ugly section, which there always is, there's always one really bad section, that can be the back. And I didn't ever put the star on her, but that can be the back, which will get covered up by wings and the star on the back. And then also you can, something that's like, if there's anything right in the very front, you can cover it right up with this star on her front. And in some of the other angels, we used other various beads and things like that to cover anything on the front that might be showing. So just know that you're never going to be able to get it perfect unless you took something else up there and covered it up completely. But we're not doing that on this design just because I didn't want to. but that's okay because we're going to cover it up as much as we possibly can and it will look okay. So don't worry about being a perfectionist. And this piece I should have ironed, so I'm gonna get the other piece. These pieces that I'm using for this video are not like from the actual kit pieces. They are from the scraps that I had left over that I cut myself. That's why the squares aren't square and things like that. Whenever I cut it, it's not perfect, but whenever the people on my team cut it, it is perfect. They do a much better job than me. Alrighty, so in looking at this, I can see that my ugliest spot is back here. That's pretty rough. That's where a whole bunch of those points are meeting. So I'm thinking that this is probably going to have to be the back of the angel. Now I also do want to keep in mind too, like how I want the dress to look from the front as well. Like I definitely want there to be some of that swirl. I don't want the front of the dress to be right there because then well, I mean, that doesn't look terrible, but I kind of want the blue to all be to one side, like this. So I'm going to keep that in mind too while I'm deciding where I want the front of my angel to be. And in looking at that, and keeping in mind that I've got this ugly spot back here, yeah, I think that could work if I put the back right where that ugly spot is and then this as the front. I think that can be pretty nice. I do still have that pin. I think I could probably play around once I get everything where I want it. I can play around with that. But we'll go with this for now. And just so that I don't lose this spot, I'm going to go ahead and put a pin right here as kind of like a little marker pin so that I know that this is going to be the front. This is where I'm going to want to put my star. So I'm going to leave that there. It's just sticking out a little ways. And this is just so I don't lose what I just figured out in my mind. Because as soon as I start flipping her around to put that cord on her head, I'm going to completely forget what I just figured out. So that's actually what we're going to do next. We're going to go ahead and get the cord part over with. This is going to be the most gluey part, the most messy part of the whole thing. And remember what I told you in the beginning, make sure you've got like a paper towel or something nearby that you can wipe your fingers off occasionally as we're doing this, because you are going to get glue on your fingers. It's just a given. We're going to start with one end of that sparkle string. And this is going to be the front like I marked, which means I know that my back is directly opposite on this side. And this is where I want to begin. So the way that I like to do this is I like to start with putting some glue around the base of the neck all the way around. And I actually just like to draw some lines like this. And there's no point in going all the way to the top yet because it will dry. We'll just add more as we go. But I'm going to start like that. And just kind of smear it on a little bit where I'm going to start, because this is where I really want it to grab. And I want to go directly opposite my front pin, and that's where I want to start. So I'm going to lay this right down, right at the back. That way, if I can never get that end completely covered up, it's okay, because the back is where everything's going to be hidden with wings and all that stuff. And for these first couple of wraps, I just want to get it going, like get it kind of like grabbed on. And then once I've got it grabbed, the way that I find this to be the easiest is to hold the string with one hand and then just spin the angel with your other hand. So just spin her. You're not really moving the string, you're moving her. And just letting it grab as you go. And then eventually you're gonna get to a point where you have to add more glue. Now, as you get to about the halfway point and then just past it, when you start going, when you've like passed the widest part of the ball, basically, it starts to get a little bit more difficult. Not difficult, but you have to guide it a little bit more, like what you're seeing me doing here. And that's because it's going to want to slide back up her head, because we're moving to a smaller area now. Before we were going up a larger area, so it was easier to grab on. And now it's going to want to slide down. So you are going to have to kind of use your fingers a little bit more and just guide that string into place until it's grabbed with the glue, which means you're going to need to wipe your fingers a little bit more often. And when you get to the end here, just take your time. You can always add more glue. And then just cover it as much as you can. And keep in mind that this is also where we're going to be popping that halo down right on top. So if things aren't perfect, it's okay, because you're never going to see it. There's going to be a bead down on top and everything. So we do not need to worry about perfection. Now I'm close to the end, so I'm gonna snip off this excess here and then just try to kind of tuck that in right down in there so it stays. Again, whatever doesn't stay, like if a little piece just keeps wanting to pop up or something, don't worry too much about it because the bead and the halo are going to help flatten that down and hide that. All right, awesome. So I feel like that's the hardest part of the ornament, is doing the cording. So that is done. We still got the front of the angel marked. So we're gonna move on now to doing her hanger and wings. We're just gonna do that on the opposite side where we know the back of the angel is going to be. We'll go ahead and do the halo and stuff in just a few minutes. So let's start with the hanger. The hanger is going to be your shorter piece of ribbon. I like to put this down first under the wings. That way there's a little extra security there for the hanger. And to do this, all we're gonna do, I've got a little glue stuck to my fingers plus part of my napkin. All we're gonna do is just take the ends, oops, let me get on camera. Take the ends, form a loop by putting the ends together. And then I'm just gonna take a pin and pin right through those ends to hold them together like this. And then directly opposite the front of my angel, I'm gonna pin this down into her back. And remember, we're angling that pin so that it's going down into her body. We don't want it to come out the other side. I actually don't know if it would really reach right there, but it might, just in case. Just like this. I'm just looking to make sure I got it pretty centered back there. I think I did. All right, so let's move on to making the wings. I'm gonna start with the blue. On my original one here, I did a set of blue wings on the underside and then I did the red on the outside. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. And we've got a 24-inch piece of ribbon. I want to make 6 loops that are about 4 inches each loop. Each loop is about 4 inches long. And you can totally use a tape measure if you want to make sure that you're getting your loops 4 inches. And to do that, you would just pin at the 4-inch mark after you've measured out 4 inches, like this. Or you can eyeball, which is kind of what I tend to do most of the time. And we're just gonna loop and pin until we reach the end of the ribbon. And you've got a little set of wings. So I've kind of grouped this so that 3 of the loops are on one side and 3 on the other. And that way it looks like wings when I pin it on. And I'm gonna pin this directly over the pin of the hanger. So I'm just gonna pin it right down over. And again, I'm gonna angle that pin downward. Hopefully you can see that. I'm angling it downward into her body. Like that. And here's what it looks like from the front. And we're gonna go ahead and do that exact same process with the other ribbon and make a second set of wings. Alrighty. There is the second set. And before we pin this on, we actually want to go ahead and grab that little flag, because what we want to do is we want to glue this between, I'm sorry, I'm off camera. We want to glue this between the 2 sets of wings. So to get started, I'm actually going to go ahead and stick this down on top of my other set of wings, but I'm not going to push it down all the way. And I'm going to do this just like I did the first set. I'm just going to pin it right down on top, like this. But I'm not pushing it down all the way. You can see a little bit of my pin in there. Not pushing that down because I want to go ahead and put a little bit of glue in there and then stick this in. That way when I push the bow all the way in, the glue will grab this and everything will stay in place. So let me grab my glue. And this is the last time we're going to be using the glue. And what I'm doing, let's see if I can make this so that you can see it on the camera. I am putting a little dab of glue right where my pin is going in right here on top of the blue ribbon. Putting a little dab right there. And then I'm taking my little flag, the stick, and I'm putting that down right onto the glue. And I'm gonna put this where I want it to be, like however far out I want it to be sticking out of her wings. And then I'm going to go ahead and push the bow all the way down on top. And I really hope that you could see that. It was hard for me to aim it where I wanted it to aim and do it. But I'm pushing the wings, the wings all the way down to hopefully help grab that flag and hold it in place. And you're gonna wanna let that dry for just a second. Here's what it looks like from the back. And you can even adjust it if you need to. I'm gonna push it in just a little bit. All right, let's go ahead and stick our star on here. We're gonna put this right over top of that second set of wings. And for this one, I actually want to use a gold pin. And this can be a little awkward because there's two holes in these little star button things. So I'm gonna actually put one in right now and just stick it down on top where I want it, and then I'll go ahead and add the other pin. So I'm just popping this down right on top of that other pin so that it hides it. And the reason I didn't use this to make that second set of wings instead of that pin below is because these little gold sequin pins are smaller, and I didn't feel like that would hold things down enough. This is more just decorative. So I've popped that one down, and now I'm going to take a second pin, and making sure you hold this star where you want it, because when you go to put the second pin in, it's going to want to shift around on you. And I hit a spot, I think, of glue, so I'm going to use a piece of fabric and push this down. I like to use fabric sometimes as a cushion when I'm pushing pins into a particularly hard spot to push pins into. Alrighty, there we go. So cute. All right, we're gonna do the same thing in the front. We'll go ahead and get that part done too. So we've still got that marker pin in there. I'm gonna go ahead and take it out. We don't really need that there anymore. And same exact thing, I'm gonna go ahead and prep my star by putting a pin through it. And then I'm just going to, let's see, I really want to get it centered correctly here now that we've got all the other stuff on. Again, remember to keep that pin kind of going downward just a little bit. That looks pretty good. So now holding that in place, I'm going to take another gold pin and put it in that second hole. And you really got to hold them in place because, like I said, they do shift around as you're adding the second pin. Okay, so we do have a couple of things here that I want to play with. So I've got a pin up here and a pin up here that are showing. And I see an easy fix for this one. I am going to just take this pin out, being really careful. I don't want to hurt anything, but I'm going to just move it a lot further back, right on the very edge of that piece of fabric, because if I push it back here far enough, no one's ever going to see it. And I think I pushed it back too far. I missed the point. Now, something else that you can do up here if you're trying to hide pins is you can put beads up here. You can take out the pins that are in the way, that are showing, and you could put a bead up here in its place. And a bead is really pretty, so it's okay if it shows. I kind of don't want beads up here on this one. So I would rather just have those pins back there where they're kind of off to the side and no one's ever really going to notice them, rather than put some beads up there. And this one is going to be a little harder to hide, but I'm still going to just try to do the same thing. There we go. It still shows a tiny bit. I'm kind of not really worried about it. From the front, you can't really see it too much. So yeah, Alrighty guys, so there's only a few things left. We've got the halo, and then we've got decorating her dress. So let's go ahead and we'll start with the halo part. You're gonna need a pin, and we're gonna stick one of those tiny little ivory beads on here, like this. And then grab that halo, and we're gonna stick the whole thing right through the center of that. And that bead that we just put on is gonna help to hold that on. And then we're gonna put one more bead on the pin. So we've got the halo sandwiched between the two beads. And the point of this bottom bead is to give this a little bit of lift off of the top of her head so that the halo actually kind of can sit at an angle, and it's really cute. And now we're gonna pop this right on top of where the string ended when we were wrapping the cord around her head. Like I said, that's gonna help hold that down. It's gonna help hold down any looseness or cover any messiness. And the reason, by the way, that we're using a regular pin and not a gold pin here is because the gold pins are short, and I just feel better using the silver pin. It's on the top. I don't really think it's that noticeable that it's silver, but if it's really, really bugging you, you could put like a longer gold pin up there if you don't like the silver. So the only thing that we've got left now is to decorate her dress. And like I said towards the beginning of this video, you've got a couple of choices here. You can do like a haphazard thing with the beads. You could just put them all around. In fact, we've done that on all of the other angels that we've done so far. Like this one, we just decorated her dress by putting beads all around haphazardly. This is a really good way to go if you've got a lot of stuff you need to hide. So if you've got a lot of raw edges peeking out or pins peeking out, this is a great way to hide them. Or if you want to make sure, if you definitely wanted to put beads across the top, because let's say that you have more to hide up there, that's a good thing to do. We did it here in this other Christmas angel as well. Same thing, we kind of put beads across the top and then also beads throughout the dress wherever we wanted to put them, so totally haphazardly. But I wanted to do something a little bit different with this particular ornament. This was just something I thought would be fun, doing the little line of beads going down, just accentuating the red and white diagonal kind of line coming down on her dress. I just wanted to accentuate that. So again, it's totally up to you, however you want to do it. You should have like 8 or 9 beads left if you've got the kit. If you're using your own materials, you have as many as you want. So for me, I'm just going to go ahead and do a design like this. You please do whatever it is that you would prefer to do. And this part is really, really easy. We're literally just going to pin these beads on with the rest of the gold sequin pins. And I'm going to start down here. This part's kind of fun. You just play around, unpin it if you don't like it, put it back somewhere else. Just have fun playing around. Awesome. I love that so much. So cool. All right, guys, so that is pretty much it. I really hope that you enjoyed watching this, and I hope that you enjoyed making her. If you've got any questions, as always, please put them in the comments below. I love to answer your questions, so don't be afraid to ask me any questions. We've got more angels on the way, so please make sure that you are subscribed to this channel so that you can get any updates whenever we post new videos, including these awesome little angels. If you are an Ornament Girls Club member, please show us your angels in our Facebook group. I love to see them. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching, and happy ornamenting.